Hello Internet! Today I want to show you how to play Genotype, designed by John Caveyu, Paul Salomon, and Ian Zhang, and published by Genius Games. In Genotype, 1 to 5 players ages 14 and up compete as Gregor Mendel's lab assistants in the 19th century. Everyone will be collecting experimental data and manipulating the outcomes of pea plant breeding for about 45 to 90 minutes. Check it out. To set up, place the game board in the center of the play area, which seems overwhelming at first glance, but it's really just broken into 5 sections: the dice pool, the treasury, the university, the nursery, and the tool shed. Place the offspring dice and gene tiles near each corresponding color and place a coin in each of the spots provided within the nursery. Place a supply of coins and trait markers within reach of all players. Start the round tracker on round 1 near the treasury. Add the abacus markers to each starting space on the research upgrade section. Set up the extra plot tiles, dice slots, and shuffled assistant cards near the board and create a pool of 3 assistants with the top 3 from the deck. Place the shuffled pea plant and tool cards near the nursery and draw enough cards to fill the nursery and tool shed, keeping in mind the player count, which is marked on the board. Give each player a player mat, 3 action markers, and 3 phenotype research markers in the color of their choice, the remaining 2 action markers being placed on the research upgrade spot on the main board. Each player also gets 1 coin from the supply, as well as 1 tool card, 3 pea plant cards, 1 to plant, 1 to keep, and 1 to discard.
Well, how do I know which one to keep?
For your first game, I'd recommend planting your lowest cost plant or your plant with the fewest number of traits. These will be the easiest to do while you're getting to know the game. Give the first player marker to the player who did garden work last, or choose a player randomly. There are 3 phases to every round: the working phase, the plant breeding phase, and the research upgrade phase. In the working phase, players will take turns clockwise, placing their player markers on the board to trigger that space. Once a space is covered, it's covered for the turn, so they're first come, first serve. Player markers may be placed on a player's own board in the gardening space to do 3 things in order: to draw a pea plant or tool card adding to hand, to harvest any number of pea plants from the board with all their traits covered, placing them face down somewhere, you'll score them at the end of the game, and then to plant any number of pea plant cards from your hand onto the board. You can also unlock temporary dice slots on the player mat to use during the plant breeding phase. On the main board, there are several places to place the player marker. There are 4 setting parent gene spaces, which allow you to either add or remove a gene tile to the main board to manipulate the likely outcomes of the dice being rolled.
Well, how do those gene tiles affect what's being rolled, B?
If you look at the tiles, you have here what's called a Punnett square. The included book goes into a great description of how it's used in reality to calculate the genotypes and offspring from parent genes, but for our purposes, the square determines which die faces link to which traits. For our P's roundness, the traits we can roll fall into 3 categories: 2 capital R's, a capital and lowercase r, and 2 lowercase r's. The dice can roll 4 possibilities, and depending on the result, we put that die into the matching category, depending on the row and column. The first shift spaces have no immediate effect when placed, but will grant you first pick of that color of dice during the plant breeding phase, which is up next, and whatever coin is in that color space. The second shift spaces also have no immediate effect, but will grant you first pick after the first shift spaces. The Phenotype Research Goal space lets you pay to place a phenotype research marker on a particular trait space to score extra points at the end of the game for each of your completed pea plants with the matching type. The Treasury space lets you gain 2 coins. The University space lets you pay the cost listed and immediately validate a trait on one of your planted pea plant cards. The Nursery space lets you draw 2 pea plant cards to your hand from the face-up options or the deck in any combination you'd like. The Tool Shed space lets you draw 1 tool card from the face-up options or the deck. Tool cards provide one-time benefits. You keep them in your hand until played, and then after you place them in a shared tool discard pile. Each symbol is explained in detail in the rulebook. For example, the graph knife says that you can use it when taking an offspring die to immediately take another die. Once all player markers have been placed for the turn, go to the plant breeding phase, where players will roll and set offspring dice onto the main board, and then take turns picking them to place on their player board to match and validate a corresponding trait. The Punnett squares here use a legend to place dice showing Roman numerals 1 through 4 on trait spaces. Dice showing an X are re-rolled exactly once to be placed. If an X is rolled again, it's placed in the de novo mutations area for its die color, acting as a wild card. First, any players with action markers in the first shift space of a color get to take a die of that color. Then the players with markers on the second shift space take any die in order. Finally, players take a die in turn order until all players have passed.
So, if I have a player marker on the second shift space and I'm the first player, after all the first shift picks are out of the way, I would get 2 dice in a row?
You got it, Nellie. Thinking ahead when placing your markers is the name of the game. In order to take a die, there must be an available dice slot on your player mat, and you must use that die taken in one of the available spots. When placing a die, you must also place a trait marker on a plant to prove that trait. Once all players have passed, go to the research upgrade phase, where players have opportunities to use their coins to purchase one permanent upgrade. This phase is skipped in round 5. Turns here are taken in reverse player order, so that the last player goes first and vice versa, proceeding counterclockwise around the table. There are 4 types of upgrades that can be purchased. New plot tiles are placed next to your player mat, giving you space to have an extra pea plant in play. Dice slots are placed next to your player mat, giving you space to draft an additional die during the plant breeding phase. Action markers can give you more player tokens to play during the next working phase. An assistant can be put next to your player mat, giving you a permanent ability for the rest of the game. When any purchase is made, move the abacus marker up 1 space, making that item 1 more expensive for any other players this round. At the end of the round is a reset. First, advance the round tracker. Second, pass the first player marker clockwise. Then, move each abacus marker 1 space to the left, making everything 1 cheaper. Discard the remaining pea plants, tools, and assistants in all rows. If a deck runs out, simply reshuffle and continue to play. Refill the single coin next to each Punnett square that doesn't have one. Finally, players recover all of their placed action markers and return offspring dice to the side of the game board. Then begin the next round. Play will continue until after the plant breeding phase in round 5, and then all players go to scoring, adding points for all of the following. Completed pea plant cards are worth their printed point values. Phenotype research goals are worth their value for each instance of the matching traits among their completed plants. Each trait marker on an uncompleted pea plant is worth 1 point, and each unspent coin is worth 1 point. The player with the most points is the winner. If there's a tie, the player with the most completed pea plants is the winner, and if there's still a tie, the players share the victory. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like content like this, please like, subscribe, and comment for my algorithm. Check with your local game store about Genotype. It's really a fantastic and well thought out game, and you might learn something.
I know I did. I'm your friendly gaming narwhal, and I approve of this video.
If you'd like to see a playthrough of Genotype, check the show notes for information, or let me know with a comment. Until next time, Internet, thanks so much for watching.